is it really worth it? Like, most people who are not celebrating Valentine's Day don't even miss it. And even though for some of us it can remind us of our single status and how we're not in the type of relationship that we want to be in, I doubt that it's because we're missing roses or teddy bears or chocolates. What we're actually looking for in every relationship that we have with anyone is validation. One word: validation. Hi guys, welcome back. This is Samara from CoachingConsciousCreators.com, where you can find immediately actionable tips to create the life that you desire. So tonight I have a special video for you guys. As you can see, my backdrop's a little bit different. I'm doing something a little different. I've got notes here. So if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at. But in the spirit of Valentine's Day, I'm coming to you on Valentine's Day Eve to talk about the topic of love in a more esoteric way for those of you who aren't experiencing those loving feelings. For those of you who see Valentine's Day as a reminder of not so positive memories, or a reminder of loneliness or some other negative emotion that you're experiencing, this video is for you. Earlier today, I saw a post by Jada Pinkett it was posted on Facebook. I think the original post was on Instagram, but she was talking about how her expectations around romantic love nearly destroyed her marriage to Will Smith, and about how friendship is much more important than romantic love. And seeing that post got me thinking about the concept of romantic love and why we separate romantic love from other types of love, and how we define romantic love, what we think of when we think of a romantic relationship, and why so many of us struggle with this whole concept of romance and passion. And a lot of times you hear people say, oh, you got to keep the passion alive in your marriage. Or you got to do date nights, and for Valentine's Day you got to do roses, and you got to put in all this effort to keep up all this pomp and circumstance, or your relationship won't work. And I just started to think about why that is, and I'll share a little detail about my own dating and love life. I experience quite a bit of romance at this stage in my life. I mean, I'm dating, I'm meeting new people all the time. So really, the only stages I get to experience with a person are those fun and exciting first stages. But clearly, since I'm still dating, none of those ever evolve into, an ongoing relationship. So are those things really the key to keeping a relationship intact? And should they be so coveted? Are they really necessary for us to experience the love that we're seeking? And for those of you who are watching this and you can relate to the things that I said at the beginning of the video, and you're feeling a little annoyed by all of the Valentine's Day stuff and you're not necessarily excited about it, you can probably feel where I'm coming from. Like, is it really worth it? Like, most people who are not celebrating Valentine's Day don't even miss it. And even though for some of us it can remind us of our single status and how we're not in the type of relationship that we want to be in, I doubt that it's because we're missing roses or teddy bears or chocolates. So in this video, I want to talk about some of the reasons I think that we're really disappointed in relationships a lot of times. My argument is that romantic love, or what we call romantic love, is no different from the love that we're attempting to experience in other relationships, right? Friendships, relationships with our siblings, with our parents, with our children. I think we're looking for the same thing in all of those relationships. It's just that we put different frameworks around different types of relationships. So when we look at friendships, we can set low expectations for a lot of reasons. So, okay, let me backtrack just a little bit more. What we're actually looking for in every relationship that we have with anyone is validation. One word, validation. You're worth the effort, the attention of others. We exist. So to get even more esoteric, my belief is that we come from oneness. If you put together all the colors in the rainbow, right? If you take a box of crayons and you scribble, 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 eventually you're going to get black, right? Black contains everything. So I believe that we as human beings come from the everything, the all. And the all is perfect. The all contains every single possibility, every single potentiality. Everything that can be imagined exists in the all. So in its perfection, the all wanted to experience itself. It wanted to split and know what it would do in different situations, under different circumstances, at different points in time, with different positioning of the planets. It just wanted to see itself. And so it split into the duality, the male, the female, the light, the dark, the happy, the sad, the hot, the cold, all these things that exist on these spectrums to play with itself. And so when we look at this need that we have to be seen by others, to be acknowledged, it's something that's been studied scientifically even. Like if you have a newborn and you never acknowledge that newborn, you never make physical contact with that newborn, it will die, like literally cease to exist in the 3D plane. And so when we look around and we're frustrated with our relationships and we feel lonely and we're afraid to say so, and there's all this messaging that says you need to love yourself. You don't need to deal with anybody who doesn't love you. You need to love yourself, and you need to be able to survive without others. All of that goes against human nature. And I say all that to say, feeling lonely, feeling the desire to connect with others in friendships, in romantic relationships, in a family, having a desire to have children to connect with, all of that is the reason that we're here. We need that connection. Now, nothing in nature is absolutely perfect, which is why we end up in situations where we may need to disconnect from our families because there's abuse or some other type of issue, or we just don't have family, or we have, failed friendships, failed marriages. Nothing is perfect. So breaking down what those needs are, the different ways that they can be met, really looking within, accepting that you have the needs is the first step to getting over these hurdles of loneliness and lack of connection and not being able to navigate our relationships. I know I personally struggle with disappointment. Inevitably, in any relationship with any person, we're going to experience disappointment. I mean, we're really not here to be perfect for anyone, and we won't be. All of us have disappointed someone, and all of us have been disappointed by someone. And if we spend more than an hour with any human being, we are going to experience the disappointment, just because we're all here having our own experience. So understanding that although human relationships are filled with hurt and disappointment as much as they're filled with joy and, feeling supported. I mean, they come with all of it. That's just part of our experience. So in this video, I want to share with you what you can do when you're experiencing that pain and disappointment, when you're confused about how to navigate your relationships, when you need to understand that although this journey is yours alone, and at the end of the day, no one owes you anything, and you can't depend on having all these connections that you'd like to have, when you're going through those phases where you're not feeling supported, you're not connected to anyone, you're experiencing disappointment, what you can do, the action steps that you can take to get above it and get to a place where you could potentially grow yourself and grow others through exploring loneliness and pain and disappointment It's all for a reason. It's all productive. It's all necessary. It's all part of separating from perfection and choosing to experience the full range of emotion. So when we talk about this romantic love, what Jada Pinkett was talking about, she was talking about the ways in which she believed she needed to be validated in a marriage. So I talked a little bit about frameworks around relationships and how we set different expectations, back to where I was talking about friendships. So with friendships, you have those same needs that you have in a romantic relationship, but because of the framework, because you're allowed to have multiple friends, because you're allowed to say, you know, some friendships don't have to last forever. We don't make vows in friendships. We just connect with people for whatever reason. There's a lot more leeway. So we still, when we connect with a friend, have the desire to feel seen, to feel validated. And there are a number of ways to do that. And you can have a number of friends to satisfy those needs. So you can have a friend who shares your hobbies, right? And that's how you feel validated with that person, because when you do that thing together, you're connecting and you're like, okay, somebody sees this part of me. And then you can have another friend who's kind of like your counselor. And then you can have another friend who helps you think through things. And you can spread those needs for validation and connection across a broad range. And then you have, your familial relationships, your family. And so in those relationships, the framework is more, okay, we're family, like we're blood, we're here no matter what. And so you may annoy me. You may be very different from me. I still have expectations for you. I still expect you to show up to, family events. I still expect you, if I'm in a crunch, to be there for me. And that's the framework there. But if we are disappointed and we don't get the validation that we're expecting from our family members, it's kind of like, okay, well, we're family. There's nothing I can do about that. I mean, of course, there are people who are estranged from their families. But for the most part, people have this idea that, because you're family, we're stuck together. But we still have those same validation needs. We just make different choices about those relationships because there's a different framework. Whereas with a friend, if a friend disappoints us the way a family member does, that friend is out the door. But because someone is family, we may keep them around. Same thing with children. There's like this expectation that there's unconditional love. There are all these behaviors that are socially acceptable. But within those relationships, we're still looking for validation. If we have a kid who has nothing in common with us, or if we have a kid who, as soon as they hit the age of 10, they tell us they hate us all the time, we're still experiencing intense disappointment and frustration around that. But because they're our child and that's the framework and we're expected to keep them around unconditionally, that's what we do. And so when it comes to marriage, love relationships, the relationships we're supposed to be celebrating for this Valentine's Day, we just have a different framework. We get this person and we expect them to fill in all the gaps of all of our other validation needs. So we have our group of friends and we have our validation needs there. We want to be seen and accepted, but it's inconsistent and it's spread across a lot of people. There's nobody, we may have a best friend, but we're not made to feel special above all others. Like our friends will have spouses and, romantic partners. And, sometimes we have kids before we enter romantic relationships like me. But, we expect validation. We expect our kids to look up to us and love us. And there's disappointment around that too, because, there's ways that they can't validate us and it's not their job to do that. So there's gaps there. And then there's gaps in our family relationships, right? We don't get all of our validation needs met there. People are selfish or people are just doing their own thing. But then we get to romantic relationships and it's like, all right, everything that's been missing, I now expect this person to meet all those validation needs and fill in all those gaps for me. Why? Who taught us that that's the way it's supposed to be? There was a time when the needs that were met in a marriage relationship or a heterosexual relationship, whatever you want to call it, I don't like using the word romantic, but they were needs for survival and procreation. And there was not this expectation that your mate would fill in all the gaps, make you feel more seen than anyone else in your life, make you feel more understood than anyone else in your life, make you feel more special than any of the other people in your life. This expectation is one that was manufactured. And in my opinion, it took away, or it slowed us down in on our path to self-actualization. What is self-actualization? Self-actualization is remembering, basically, that we come from the all, that we can be self-aware, that even though we come here and we have these needs and they're natural and they're part of this experience, we can step outside of ourselves and see a bigger picture and feel safe, unconditionally safe and unconditionally validated and unconditionally special, while not being special at all at the same time. More esoteric talk. But my point is, believing that our spouse or our significant other can meet all those validation needs is unrealistic. But it's part of the construct that we live in. And so it's something that we face. And even those of us like myself who are aware that it's impossible for one person to meet all those needs for validation, we can still fall into the trap of thinking it's possible. And the reason for that is because biology tricks us. It's a survival tool for civilization. When you meet someone, you feel exhilarated. And for a brief moment, when I say brief moment, that could be anywhere from a day to the first 10 years of a marriage. But for a period of time, you are under the illusion that those validation needs are met. You feel whole. You feel seen. And you think it's because the other person is causing it. But what's really happening for both of you is that your hormones and all of the electrical pulses in your body are campaigning for you to continue the human race. And so they are masking the gaps for you temporarily. And I think that is the reason why it was so easy to move into this construct of believing that a significant other could meet all of your gaps. Even people who understand that you can't just have you and your spouse and that's it. You need to have friends. You need to have a life. You need to have passions and aspirations. We still think that after we do all that, whatever is left is the responsibility of our mate. And it's just not. It just isn't. And if we don't understand that, then disappointment is inevitable, right? And there's always that period when you're coming down from those influences of your hormones, where you feel that letdown. And you think it's because the other person's behavior changed. And you don't realize that your behavior has changed too, because both of you are coming off the high. You know, by then you've probably done the thing that's necessary to procreate, and you become attached, and all of those hormones that created that high that made you feel, or masked the gaps in your validation needs, are gone. And all of a sudden this person is not who you thought they were. All of a sudden this person is lacking in some area. You know what I'm saying? Like, all kinds of things happen to cause your perception of the other person to shift. And you think it's because the romance has died. Or you think it's because the person is taking you for granted, or that they've changed. And, you know, in some cases those things are true. But 9 times out of 10, the mask has just been removed. The temporary, patching up of the gaps in your validation needs are back. And now you've got the same gaps that you had before, because guess what? Your mate is just another person, just like your friends and just like, anybody else in your life. Another thing that compounds that disappointment in relationships is there's something we call points of failure in the type of work I do. So the more points of failure that you have in a process or a system or even an object, the more chances there are for failure and disappointment. So when you merge your life together with someone, when you are talking to them every single day or seeing them every single day or on a very regular basis, more than you're seeing other people, there's just more opportunities to be disappointed. There's just more opportunities to misinterpret what's being said during a conversation. There's more opportunities to notice that things weren't done according to your expectations. And so the construct or the framework that we've built around romantic relationships, combined with the sheer number of opportunities there are to disappoint one another, make for a greater than 50% divorce rate. So with all that said, what do we do? So excuse me while I refer to my notes here. When we are dealing with another human being that we've decided to call our significant other, they're so significant they can meet all of our needs. If we're not self-aware, if we're not in the practice of examining our deepest motives, of examining what we really desire, you'd be surprised how many people don't even know what they want because they've never completed the exercise of figuring it out. And so there's so many layers to get through if you're new to self-awareness. I'm saying all this to say, sometimes when you're dealing with your significant other, let's say you were all geared up for Valentine's Day and you just don't get what you expected, right? You were expecting to be taken out somewhere nice, to get a card, to get flowers, and you don't. Sometimes that emotion that we feel, because we can so easily attribute it to the behavior of another person, we don't dig deeper. How do we dig deeper? How do we evaluate this disappointment and overcome it? The first step is identifying the need. Like, okay, why did you want flowers? Why did you want to go to dinner? Was it because you wanted flowers for some reason only on that day? Were you only hungry, or were you only desiring to go to a restaurant on Valentine's Day? No, you probably want to go to a restaurant on other days of the year as well, and you wouldn't be disappointed if it didn't happen. So the real desire is being acknowledged as special, right? And the person that you rely on to do that has not done that for you. So then you ask yourself, why do I need them to do that? Is there another way that I could feel special? Could I do that for myself? Do I feel special via some other relationship, and can I choose to focus on that? If I know that this person is not going to make me feel special in the ways that I expect, can I accept that within the framework of this relationship? Do I want to change the framework of the relationship? Let's say you're married or you're dating someone and they don't do that for you. Can you make a conscious decision about whether that can just be okay? You know what I mean? Or let's say, for example, you do say, fine, I'm dealing with a guy who's not romantic. He has a lot of other qualities that I like. But I'm going to hate the way it feels when I get with my girlfriends that next week and they're all talking about what their significant others did for them and I don't have anything to share. Well, could you examine the possibility that when everyone is sharing their experiences, which are valid, you know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with, having those needs satisfied in those ways. But consider your level of vulnerability with your friends. Could you say, hey guys, I was really struggling with the reality that my partner didn't do those things for me. And I was able to spend some time reflecting and understanding the root of those desires and how I can meet them in other ways. Do you have the types of friendships that would allow you to express yourself in that way? If you don't, is there room to improve the quality of your friendships? You know what I mean? Like, there's all this exploration that could be done via self-awareness. And at the end of the day, once you figure all this out, once it's clear to you, okay, I have this need and it's no one else's responsibility to make sure it gets met. It's a desire that I have for others to help me to experience validation and being seen. It's a natural desire that I have, but nobody owes me that. And I can get very creative instead of, tearing myself apart on the inside or tearing apart another person because they aren't meeting my expectations. I could instead open up the possibilities and figure out more creative ways to get those needs met. I can, if I choose to, reframe that relationship and make it something else. Let's say you're dating someone and they don't fit into the framework that you have for a romantic partner, but they're a really good friend or acquaintance or companion for some activity. Just reframe it without blame, without saying this person was wrong because they didn't meet my need for validation. At the end of the day, we're the only ones who are responsible for making sure we're validated. I'm not saying that you should be able to sit in a room alone and feel validated all the time, but you should be able to identify opportunities to validate yourself as well as opportunities to be validated by others without trying to force it on someone or having all these expectations around specific ways that people are supposed to behave. And it's freeing. It's freeing to be able to do that. You're not bound. From personal experience, I can remember feeling like I'm trapped in this marriage and it's not giving me what I want. And in all reality, I was not trapped. Clearly, now I'm in a completely different position. Those needs that I had are being met in so many ways that I never would have thought of at that point in my life. And sometimes it seems scary, especially when we're concerned about what other people think and how other people perceive things. But the key here is to care more about how you feel in your experience than what anyone thinks, even you. What I'm saying is being honest with ourselves, being emotionally honest, mentally honest about whether or not we're putting burdens on people that are not theirs to carry. Can lead to a type of freedom and a type of satisfaction that we could have only imagined before. Let's see, I had 3 steps here. Sorry, I'm referring to my notes, but I haven't really stuck to any of what's on this paper. Yeah, we talked about evaluating the need, the root of it, and by clearly identifying the root, being able to evaluate different and more creative ways to make sure that need for validation is met. If you have to change the framework of a relationship, like I said, the possibilities are endless. One additional thing I wanted to talk about was how sometimes we have validation needs that are impossible for anyone to meet. And I'm going to give an analogy. So let's say you have a container, right? And you built this container like a bowl to capture rainwater for you to drink. So there's nothing wrong with that, right? It rains, the bowl catches water, you drink it, simple. Well, during a particularly violent storm, other things get knocked into the bowl. Rocks, dirt, maybe a dead animal. It's kind of gross. And you go to drink the water and it's disgusting. It's poison, right? The intention was to capture clean water, but for whatever reason, dirty water was captured. You drank it, you got sick. One way to handle that would be to take a lid, an airtight lid, stick it on that bowl, and not let anything that's not supposed to be in there ever get in there again. Let nothing in from now on. Another option that requires a little more effort and thought is to create a screen, right? So the screen doesn't keep what you need from coming in, but it does block debris and things that you don't want in. So I'm saying all that as an analogy for those validation needs, right? We all have these bowls in us for capturing validation and acceptance and all those things that we came here to experience, right? But sometimes in tumultuous conditions, a toxic family, an abusive relationship, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, stuff we don't want gets inside of us. And it's painful. It's brutal. We are like scrambling to do anything not to allow that to happen again. So we go and we grab that solid lid and we put it on top of that bowl, right? So let's say you were a kid and your mother abandoned you, or she didn't give you the attention that you felt that you needed. And so it was so painful to have that neglect, because sometimes kids perceive things in ways that they, it's all about perception. So all of that goes into your bowl and it hurts, right? So as a kid, you don't have the sophisticated skill to create a net to put over the bowl. So you just throw a lid, anything on there, and you forget about it. And you don't have to worry about that pain anymore because you've closed yourself off completely. You don't feel anything anymore. You don't feel rejected because you don't feel at all, right? And that's an unfortunate part of being a child and impressionable when these types of things happen. But then you become an adult, right? That bowl is still there. You still have those validation needs that you had when you were a kid, but you got this lid on there so tight and you got it stuffed down somewhere where you can't even readily access it, right? So when another woman comes into your life and tries to love you, she can't access your love bowl, your validation bowl. Number one, she can't even find it because you can't find it. And she can't get anything in there because you got that lid so tight. A healthy way to address this would be, do the work. A lot of what I talk about has to do with the subconscious, and that's what this work is about. Pulling up unresolved issues, those lids that we put on tight when we were kids, where even when somebody tries to meet our needs, we won't even let them. We can't connect because we've closed ourselves off. Take that bowl out, dig it up, identify it, say, oh wow, okay, now I remember that I closed this off in me. I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to do the work. It's going to take a little extra effort to pull that lid off and get it open. Dust it out. And then you look at it and you say, okay, now I'm exposed again. And that can be a terrifying feeling when you've experienced pain, right? When you've had garbage thrown in and it took you a long time to recover from that. Well, you do the work, you clean it out. You don't leave it open again, but instead of closing it off, you put a mesh on top. So that, because a lot of people say, well, you need to be able to identify a toxic person, or you need to be able to identify somebody that's going to misuse you. And sometimes it is easier than other times to do that. The real way to keep from experiencing trauma again is to set appropriate boundaries. Boundaries are not that tight lid. Boundaries are that mesh. So if water is coming in, the water is able to get through. The validation is able to get through. The acceptance is able to get through. But abuse is not. Neglect is not able to get in. You've got the proper lid to let in what needs to come in and to keep out what needs to stay out. So I said all that to say, sometimes when we don't feel that our needs for validation are met, it's not because we haven't found the right opportunity for them to be met or we haven't found the right people. It's that we've made it impossible ourselves, and we've stuffed it so far down in our subconscious mind that we don't even know. We don't even remember. It's like living in a house for 20 years. There's stuff you're going to find when you move. You really can't even bring back up the memory of ever having purchased the item or received it. And that's how some of our validation bowls are. When we didn't get that need met at some point in our lives, we closed that lid tight and we put it away because we didn't want garbage to get in there ever again. So some of this work has to do with addressing those unresolved issues. I think that was the bulk of what I wanted to say. I did want to highlight like 3 benefits of going through this process of self-awareness, identifying needs, and being creative, stepping outside of frameworks, adjusting frameworks so that we can get those true validation needs met instead of staying surface and remaining frustrated that things aren't going the way we want them to go. Going through this process of self-awareness, digging up those old bowls with the tight lids and removing them so that we can be more balanced in how we receive and give validation to others. We say love, but really as adults, it's just validation. It's just being accepted, being seen. The benefits to doing this are threefold. Number 1, it allows you the opportunity to be more satisfied more of the time. You spend less time frustrated about what somebody did or didn't do. And you spend more time opening your mind and exploring all of the possible ways to satisfy yourself. And we're taught that that's selfish and that being selfish is not spiritual. It's the most spiritual thing you can do to fill up your cup first and let it overflow so that what you have to offer others is a surplus. Have you ever received something from somebody who didn't have much to give? Doesn't it feel awful? Either they don't have it to give me, like, dang, I don't feel right taking this. Or you don't know that they don't have it because they're putting on airs like they do, and they give it to you begrudgingly, and where you don't even feel any warmth. You're like, oof, I'd rather not have this. Whereas when Oprah does her giveaway, Oprah's overflowing. So you're celebrating, Oprah's celebrating. And that's how, when we give love and validation, that's how it should be. Everybody should be winning. You should be like, my cup is full because I made sure that every day I'm waking up smiling. Every day I'm having fun. Every day I'm connecting with people. And no, it's not going to be perfect. You're still going to run into disappointment. But being responsible for making sure that your needs are met is the greatest gift that you can give to anyone. Your kids, your significant other, your friends, your parents, your cousins. When you are full and you can't be shaken, when you are full and people are operating with empty bowls and they're throwing their garbage at you, you know what I'm saying? Like hurt people. When you can't even be moved and you can love unconditionally because you are full, that's the most beautiful gift you can give anyone. That's when they say turn your cheek, right? Because when they slap you, it doesn't hurt. So you just, you're too happy. Like and it could rub people the wrong way. Some people who are suffering don't like to see people so happy. But eventually they're going to ask themselves, it's going to force them to go within. Why am I so angry at that girl for smiling every day? Why does that bother me so much? It can prompt others to dig deep and, experience that self-awareness. It allows you to be more empathetic, right? Because if you have pulled yourself out of frustration and depression and lack, and you remember what it was like to feel deprived, and to have nothing to share with others but the pain that you were experiencing, or the neglect that you were experiencing, or the lack of connection that you were experiencing, you know that anybody who's coming at you sideways is hurting. If they're coming at you sideways, they live sideways. You know what I'm saying? Like, to come at you sideways, you got to already be sideways. So understanding that allows you to have empathy instead of being reactive. So that's number 2. The first one was be more satisfied more of the time. The second one is be more empathetic and understand where people are coming from so that you're not so affected. And number 3, it gives you the opportunity to improve relationships by moving them to their proper framework. Instead of throwing the whole person away because they weren't a good, I don't know, skiing buddy or spouse or whatever, they didn't belong there. And when you stop making them responsible for validating you in that way and you put them in their proper place, that relationship is so much richer. You haven't thrown the whole person away. You've seen that person for who they actually are, because you've seen yourself for who you actually are. And that's the whole point. That goes back to the very beginning. Our whole intention here is to be seen. So this Valentine's Day, instead of, I saw somebody post on Facebook, who wants to go with me to Walmart and knock all the Valentine's Day stuff off the shelf? I mean, it's an opportunity to connect. If somebody says, I'm down, that's connection. But instead of doing that, this Valentine's Day, look inside and love yourself enough to get to the bottom of what it is that you really need, and to think outside the box. Let's say your significant other didn't plan a date. You don't have a date, or, you're all alone. You don't have kids, a significant other, anybody to celebrate Valentine's Day with. Go inside. Acknowledge and accept your need to be validated and to be seen and to be adored, because you are adorable. Really, we all are. We all come from the one. And just focus on that. And naturally, your mind, your heart, your soul will start to explore all of the possibilities. Once you accept that you have needs that are legitimate, once you understand what they really are, and once you know all of the ways while in this beautiful experience on the planet that you can meet them, life becomes exciting. How exciting is it to no longer feel trapped within any particular framework, to know that if you think about it long enough, you can figure out how to get those needs met. You don't have to be deprived. You don't have to accept garbage. You don't have, you're not bound by these ideas. And I think that's what Jada Pinkett was getting at. Don't limit yourself when it comes to love. Be open. This Valentine's Day. This was a super long video. This is the longest video I've ever done. Maybe I don't need to do videos in my bedroom because I talk too much. Let me know if you liked this. It's a little different from what I normally do. In the comments below, share with me, what you plan to do with your Valentine's Day, whether that's, enjoy your dozen roses and your candlelight dinner, or write down how you're going to address all of your validation needs and accept that you need to be validated. Let me know in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell notification to find out when I post more videos. I owe you guys a ton of videos that I promised, and I will be coming back to do those soon. But I wanted to get this one out for all those lonely hearts on Valentine's Day. I'm with you. My heart is with yours. Thank you guys for watching.